I saw just how sick he was, and I just wanted to be able to be there in those moments for people when they're having to make tough decisions. Euthanasia comes from the words meaning good death. It's better to be able to make that selfless decision, because at that point, we're only keeping them alive for us, and it's not fair to them to keep them alive if they're in pain. With animals, they can't speak for themselves, so we have to advocate for them. You spend all your time with them, you grew up with them, so what is something that your pet loves to do? You can choose a specific urn that you would like. You can take their ashes and make it into a necklace.
Today I'm joined by a fascinating guest, and we're going to talk about a topic some people might not think about. I'm joined by Jennifer Lee today and her husband, Zachary Reynolds, who isn't with us, but it's important to mention his name as well because they are a couple of vets, literally.
Yes.
And that's also the name of their veterinary clinic here in Spring, Texas. They're a team of vets that have come together to help care for your fur babies at a time of need. But today we're going to talk about a topic that is sometimes hard to discuss, but I think it's just as important. We're going to talk about when you bring your pet into the vet, and unfortunately there's nothing left that you can do, and we have to make those hard decisions of perhaps euthanizing them. And what are the options if you are having to euthanize your animals? So Jennifer, welcome.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. So how long have you been a vet?
So both my husband and I actually graduated in 2015 from Texas A&M.
Of course, yeah. I was going to already say, you got to be A&M because I think that's where all vets go, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much, right? If you're in Texas, that is, right? So what brought you to Spring, Texas? Are you guys from Spring, Texas, or from the north area of Houston?
So I actually grew up in the north area of Houston. My husband is actually from West Texas, from a little town called Kermit, which is an hour away from Odessa. So very different from here. But I actually grew up in Houston. I went to Klein Forest for high school, so real near this area. So I just wanted to come back here because that's where I grew up, and it's the community that I'm familiar with, and just wanted to, give back and, do my veterinary work here just because it was a place that I grew up in. So
yeah, and when you talk about community, right, there's all these different professions that we as a community truly rely on. You have your doctors, you have your teachers for your children, you have your the people that work at your local stores to be able to provide you merchandise, but just as important is the veterinarians to care for your fur babies and your animals. Because I think, how many households would you say on average have a pet?
I know I read the statistic somewhere, so I'm pretty sure I'm not quoting this correctly, but I know at least maybe 85-90% of people have a pet in their household, whether it's a dog or a cat, or, exotic animals. And some people also, who live and have land, they have horses, donkeys, goats, all of that stuff. So, I mean, it's a wide range of, animals. We particularly only see, our small dogs and cats, but, we think about all these other animals that are in the field as well that also need care. So
yeah. So do you guys also do exotic animals, or are you just pretty much to the domestic cat, dog, maybe a rabbit, or is that exotic?
Yeah. So rabbits are still considered exotic. I mean, we see them for the occasional nail trim. We've seen a bird for, nail trims as well, but we don't really do any medical care on them. Just, basic kind of grooming necessary stuff for that. But we mostly see dogs and cats.
Wow. So, when we talk about this whole other area of veterinary care that people don't think about, but it's probably very prevalent here in the state of Texas, is the livestock, right?
Yes.
The horses, the cows and stuff like that, because they're just as important and need the care as well. So let's talk about probably majority of the households do have cats and dogs, right? So it's important that those are the ones that we kind of focus on right now, and that's probably what's most relatable to most of the families that are out there. And I'm sure they have more than one cat or dog around. I mean, I'm a cat lover. We have 4 cats in our family, so so we understand the importance of having them cared for on a regular basis. But recently, my husband, who had his cat for an upward of 18 years, lived a very long, healthy life. One morning we woke up and unfortunately the cat had jumped off the bed, and we heard it make this like very unusual meow sound, and watched him kind of walk around. And it was in the wee morning hours, so we know the vets weren't open yet. But as soon as the veterinary clinic opened, we took him to the vet, and come to find out he had cancer, and one of the tumors, unfortunately, when he jumped off the bed, had dislodged, and he was bleeding internally. And they just kind of gave us that look and said, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do, and we need to put him to sleep. And so it was, the humane thing to do was to euthanize, and he got euthanized with us, lovingly around him. But I mean, I'm talking about my personal experience, and I'm sure many of our listeners have experienced it perhaps to some degree. And for those who haven't, I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for them to understand why do we euthanize our animals, and what brings us to that decision of euthanization, and what can we do for our animals once they've been euthanized, because then we are charged with caring for our deceased animals just the same, and you have to advise them on such. So maybe share some of your own personal stories that you've had to deal with different clients, and how it was handled.
Yeah, so I'm actually probably going to start talking off about my own personal experience of why I became a veterinarian, because that's a really intricate part of the story. Actually, I grew up with animals my whole life. We had a Yorkie that we grew up with. It was my dad's dog. And then I had like 4 cats growing up. And then we had a lot of the stray cats outside that we fed and took care of. But one of the cats that I grew up with, his name was Bozo. He was a stray cat that we adopted outside. And then when he turned about 8 or 9, we actually found out he had lymphoma. Oh. And so my dad, we took him to Gulf Coast veterinary specialists, where they diagnosed everything. They found out that it was pretty much everywhere. And so my dad opted to do radiation and chemo for him. And so I got to see him through that whole process. Unfortunately, his liver gave out at around like 6 months. And so I saw him in the intensive care unit. At that point, I was like, I want to be a vet, because I saw just how sick he was, and I just wanted to be able to be there in those moments for people when they're having to make tough decisions, or just be there in general, and help as much as I can throughout the life of the pet. And so, I saw him then, and we said, our goodbyes. We spent time with him. And once we had left, he actually passed away. And so, that is my journey into becoming a veterinarian. And so, a lot of people, they always ask me that question. They're like, isn't it hard, because you have to, that's part of your job, that you have to, do euthanasias. You have to have these conversations with people when pets are at the end of their life. And I tell them, no, just because I've been through it, and my dad has really prepared me. And he, growing up with a bunch of animals, he told me, you shouldn't ever let them, suffer. The fact that we're able to give them this option, and actually euthanasia comes from the words meaning good death. And so, you think about that you're able to provide them this peace, because actually in 2016, my dad actually was diagnosed with lung cancer. And so he was one of my biggest motivators in my life, and was very supportive of everything that I did. He actually told me he wanted to become a veterinarian, but he couldn't deal with the sick animals. He couldn't deal with that aspect of it, because it's just so hard. And he said that each animal just kind of takes a piece of you, which I totally agree with. But I also find that the experience of having an animal that unconditionally unconditional love is so worth it. And so, when it comes to the end of their life and there's nothing that I can do, I tell people, like my experiences, and I tell them, hey, I know this is a rough decision, but I know that, right now what they're going through, they're in pain or, whatever else. And I always tell people I care more about the quality of their life rather than the quantity, because you want them to have a fulfilling life. You want them to have, a life with no pain, no suffering. And seeing my dad go through cancer, and the fact is that a lot of the times, sometimes I wish that people could have a more peaceful death, because I watched my dad waste away, and that was just so very sad. And he even told me, he was like, trying to help me deal with the grief of, losing him. He said, if I was an animal, you would have euthanized me already. Mm-hmm. And so he taught me a great lesson growing up that, it's better to be able to make that selfless decision, because at that point, we're only keeping them alive for us. And it's not fair to them to keep them alive if they're in pain or, there's nothing else that we can do for them and they're just wasting away. And so I always tell people to help make that decision, think of when they were at their prime and they, 3 things that they love doing. Once 2 of those 3 things are gone is usually when I say it's time. And I learned that from one of the oncologists at A&M, Dr. Barton. She actually taught us that because, it's just so important to think about, others, because with animals, they can't speak for themselves. Mm-hmm. So we have to advocate for them. And I think that, it's my job also as an unbiased person outside, I can tell them, hey, this is what's happening with your pet. This is what's going on. Because a lot of people have told me too in the past that they've waited too long and they felt so bad for letting their pet go on when they were suffering. So I always am very upfront with people and try to have that conversation with them, and just put in my own experiences because I've been through it so many times. And, I've also been through losing my dad. So I try to, go into it with that and with all that empathy, and just discuss these things because it's difficult, but it's part of my job. And I think that it's very important that I advocate for both, the pet owner and the pet, because I'm here to help them through that decision because it is difficult.
I want to say that listening to you and just hearing that genuine empathy in your voice that you have because of your unfortunate personal experiences, I can truly say it makes you a phenomenal vet because you can put yourself in the place of the families who are bringing their pets in and having to make that hard decision. You talked about one of 3 things that is a measurable that you kind of use as a guide to tell families, well, now maybe the decision-making time. What are those 3 things, if you can elaborate more on those?
Yeah, so usually the 3 things are personal to that person, that individual, and that pet. So they know their pet the best, and I'm like, hey, you know your pet the best. You spend all your time with them. You grew up with them. So, what is something that your pet loves to do? And most people, they say, hey, he loves to eat, he loves to run around, he loves to harass the cat, or the cat loves to harass the dog. So, I usually say, hey, once 2 of those 3 things that your pet loves doing go away, then, it's probably time.
Yeah, and it's so hard because, you see the love that we pour into our pets and the fact that we have to make that hard decision. But sometimes that hard decision truly is, like you said, ends the suffering of the pet. And it just seems so dignified that the whole controversial topic, wishing that we could do it for our loved ones, right? You even spoke of that with your father and having to watch him waste away, basically. And knowing that your profession allows you to not allow a pet to waste away or suffer, but yet we have to allow our our family members, our human beings to do that. It kind of feels like an ingest. But even when we'd had people in the past to try to be advocates for dignified deaths, we still, as a human society, look down upon it and think that it's murder and it's ending one's life before it's supposed to, even though they no longer have quality of life. We all will die of something, and if it's not of a sudden death, then it's going to be a gradual death. And I think we save our pets from having to have that gradual death that tends to have suffering that accompanies it. So, it's, I want to say it's comforting, but tragic at the same time to know your reasonings for becoming a vet. But I think truly it makes you such a valuable vet.
Oh, thank you.
To be. I truly, truly do. So I've come to the decision to euthanize my pet. Walk me through what that looks like, and what kind of advice do you give? What kind of options do the families have in memorializing their pet, or caring for their body and then memorializing them?
Yes. So the process pretty much, once we've made that decision, is I ask the owners, like, have you thought about aftercare, what you wanted to do afterwards? So we actually have a specific grief room that we put our families in that are making that decision. It has a couch in there. It has a blanket. The owners can sit with their pet and just be with them, hug them, kiss and love on them while the whole process is happening. We actually place an IV catheter in the animals just so we have direct access to their veins so that the process is smooth and peaceful. We let the owners spend as much time as they would like in there with them. One of our veterinary technicians, Reagan, actually thought of giving Hershey's Kisses right before, so that we're giving them one last kiss if they would like. And so the setup in there, we also have a lift table for those patients that can't walk, and we can transport them easily. And so we give them the options, we walk through them. So some people, they do have land, or, they've buried their pets in the past. So they opt to do that, take the body home. We actually put them in a nice burial box. And then we put little angel wings on the box with their name, and then wrap them up nicely, and hand that to the owners. And then there's also cremation. So we can either have communal cremation, which our service that we use is Fond Memories. And so the communal cremation is usually you're not getting the ashes back, but they take the ashes and they have acreage on their property and they spread the ashes throughout under a tree or, throughout the land that they have. You can also do a communal cremation with a paw print. So it comes back with your pet's paw prints before they're actually cremated. And then there's private cremation, which is where you actually get the ashes back and you can choose a specific urn that you would like. And then that also comes with a paw print as well. And then also there's options. Some people opt to do at-home euthanasias, which we only do on a specific basis, but there are services that offer that. So we can tell people if you would like to do it at home, if it's more comfortable for you, then you can definitely do that, and we can give you the name of a service that will do that for you. There's also the Fond Memories also offers, if you would like to have a little memorial service for your pet, you can definitely do that, and then have them cremated while you're there. So there's a bunch of different options. They also have a catalog of things where you can take their ashes and make it into a necklace or, things like that. So there's a bunch of different options that people don't really think about. And I know it's overwhelming, especially when we're already making the decision to euthanize. So we offer them the basic options of the communal cremation, the home burial, and the private cremation. And if they already had something in mind that they thought about then we can discuss those options with them.
Wow. Yeah. And I remember, I mean, I'm sure some more of the options have increased since I was doing pet cremation. When I was going through mortician school, right after mortician school, actually, I started working at a pet crematory. And I truly can say from my personal experiences, I never got to meet with the families unless they were coming for a private cremation with viewing, and where they could actually witness it. They were actually bringing us the body. But majority of the time was spent going around to all the different veterinary clinics throughout the Houston, greater Houston area, and getting to know the vets, the staff, and the dignified way that you all took care of the pets, ensured they were properly identified. So when I came and picked them up, I knew exactly what needed to be done for the pet, for the family. Would take them back to the crematory, do the actual cremation of the pet. If there was a paw print to be done that didn't get done at the clinic, or they didn't at that time have the materials to do such. I think now, it's been 18 years for me since I, was cremating pets. So a lot of the stuff now has been moved into the veterinary clinics, which I think is absolutely wonderful, because now the families can see the choices they have there, as hard as it is. And I think they're embracing it more than what they did 18 years ago. But yeah, and then, clipping the little hair off of the animal and creating a little keepsake and their collar, and, all of the little things that you have to think about, that will leave a lasting impression, and allow them to a tangible, right, that they can, look back on and know that was their pet. So being able to create that lasting memory, and as difficult as the decision is, again, we're always, unfortunately, death is a part of life, and it affects not only your humans, but the animals as well. I came across some passage at one time, and maybe you have too, and maybe you can elaborate more on it, is that they find it interesting at the short time span of the life of an animal, in comparison to a human, right? And someone said that animals come onto the earth with unconditional love to give, and because their purpose is already defined for them, that they don't need as many years to create it or make it what it's supposed to be in their lifetime, and so that's why their life is so short. I don't know if you ever heard anything similar to that, as to what helps us understand why an animal's life is so short in comparison to a human's life.
I've heard that pets are pretty much angels on the earth. So that's why they don't have as much time as we do, because they're helping us through episodes in our life. So one of our clients actually has a beautiful story of, her pet. It's her and her daughter, and they actually have a Chihuahua. And the mom actually lost her son, so the daughter's brother. And so they got the Chihuahua to help her deal with the grief of losing, her son/brother. And I hear stories like this all the time. And what I usually tell people too, because sometimes during the euthanasia process or afterwards, people will talk to me about, getting another pet or, all of this. And so usually what I tell people is when animals show up in our lives, I honestly think that it's the previous pet giving them a new friend, because they know that they're grieving from them. And so a lot of times it's crazy what happens. It's like maybe a week or a month after they lose their previous pet, and they're like, I just found this dog or cat. And I'm like, so-and-so probably sent them to you because they know you needed them.
Yeah, that happened with my husband. He, after he lost his beloved cat, I told you after like 18 years, that cat was, basically defined my husband. And he would always go to PetSmart and look at the cats. And there was just this one cat that would always, pay attention to him. And it was interesting because every time my husband would go, he'd go every day. on his way home from work and stop in to see this cat. And for 30 days, that cat must have went through probably 8 to 9 roommates. And he never got taken. And I told my husband, I said, it's probably because he's waiting for you to take him. And sure enough, we adopted him. His name is now Shelby. He's a tuxedo cat, great personality. But I think truthfully that the cat chose him and would not go with anybody else but him. And I'm sure there was probably opportunities for him to be chosen over his roommates, but I wasn't there. And so it's interesting that 30 days later, that cat was still there, and he has a great personality. But truthfully, he was, I think, chosen. He chose my husband. My husband didn't choose him. But and one of the things that I ended up doing for my husband to provide him comfort in the loss of his cat, Jazz, I stumbled across this amazing site, and I was curious if you had heard about it, the Cuddle clones.
No, I haven't heard it.
Yeah, so it's called Cuddle Clones, and they actually will recreate a stuffed animal that looks just like the animal, your pet, right? And so I was kind of scared. I was excited to get it for him because I understood the impact the loss had on him, but at the same time I was like, oh, am I reopening this emotional wound by getting him a stuffed animal that looks just like his cat? And he was totally taken back and totally appreciative. And he would tell me, he'd be like, honey, I swear that cat's breathing. I'm like, it's just a stuffed animal, dear. It's your brain playing tricks on you, right? Because we have such an attachment to our animals, and even in the time when the animal has passed away, he'd be like, the cat's breathing. I'm like, no, it's not. It's your mind playing tricks on you. It's just part of the process. That your mind has to learn to accept, and still to this day, the cat is so well cloned that there'll be times that we'll walk past and we're like thinking it's another one of the cats of the 4, and you almost have to do a double take because they did such a great job about replicating him. But yeah, so there's that opportunity to bring the comfort, to him, years later. Of course, for the pet. But it's hard to lose a pet. It truly is. And then, having them cremated, I think, or buried, we have to do something, right? We have to have a disposition for the pet. And whatever anybody chooses, of course, we chose cremation, of course, and still have his ashes at home with us in an urn and stuff. So he's still close to us, just in a different form now. So it's interesting that we have these options that continue to bring us comfort. But in all honesty, it doesn't happen without you guys. Because you're the ones that care for them throughout their lives and keep them as healthy as possible. But yet you are also their advocate when it comes time to say enough, and there's no more that we can do. And they have their angelic existence in our life has now come to a close, and it's time for them to pass on and leave behind all of their memories. So it's bittersweet almost, yes?
Yeah, it is. And I, always tell people, it's never going to be enough time for any pets, for people, for anyone that we share our lives with. But I think that what I tell people is that the memories that they give us, no matter how much pain we're feeling at the end when, it's time to let them go, I would never trade any of those memories, like, ever. I would go through the pain 100 times over just because they've brought so much joy to my life. The things that you think about them doing, the pain is completely worth it. And I think, I tell people it is sad, but at the same time, it's like a celebration of their life because they gave us so much in such a little amount of time. And the things that they can do for us is just amazing.
Yeah, that is true. They truly are. Now hearing how you present it, I truly see that they are angels walking amongst us in a covered in fur. Covered in fur, covered in feathers. If I may do a quick sidestep and talk about the exotic animals that people might have their they're not dog lovers, cat lovers, but they're more into the reptiles and the exotics, or birds for that matter. You may not have the personal experience with dealing with them, but do they also go through the same options and choices of euthanasia, or are those, because of the type of animals they are they just destined to live out their natural life and die when it's their time? We don't euthanize them, or do we?
I believe that there are euthanasia options for exotic animals, just like with domestic pets. They're done differently, obviously, because, reptiles have a different metabolism. They have a different anatomy. Birds, same type of thing. I'm actually not sure how it's done, but I know that there are options for them, because there are, instances where we can't save them either. And I know that exotic vets do perform those euthanasias, and I've seen like little urns or little burial boxes that are made specifically for exotic pets. So I know that it's done. I just don't know in what manner, because I don't specialize in that.
I had an opportunity to do a cremation on a snake, which was somebody's pet. And, it was still interesting to see that the cremation process was still able to render, enough ash to provide the family that closure they needed, to give them something in return and to hold on to. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that no matter the pet, be it an exotic, a reptile, a fish for that matter, domestic animal, or even a livestock animal, they all have a place in our life. They all touch us to some degree. And unfortunately, when they have to pass away, it's important to know that there's veterinarians that will take care of them at their greatest time of need, and also take care of the pet family, right? The parents and the those that love the pet. So I greatly appreciate all that you guys do professionally and empathetically for people who love our pets.
Oh, thanks.